Tech Tales 119. Tech Tales is a playlist on my channel where I tell stories about actual work that I do for my real world clients. I blur out things where I need to protect their identity, but this is the real work that I'm doing. In season 1, I actually read through my time slips, and you really got an understanding of every task that I might be called upon to do. In this season 2, I'm focusing on single stories, trying to include pictures and videos where I can, and just talk about the task. This one is a task that I did this morning. My client called me, I think it was yesterday, saying their surveillance system is not accessible. They have apps on their cell phones where they can check in on the surveillance camera system in their building, their office, their shop. They have field service people that go out and do work, and they have security cameras installed, obviously. So if their alarm goes off, or if they need to check up on whether a truck is back that is maybe overdue, they can do this through the surveillance system. I don't actually know if that's something they do with it, but they recently had an issue where they needed access to the cameras and discovered they can't access them from their cell phones. So they asked me to come in and check it out. Now, there is another company that provides support for that, but they had called them. They are across the country. So it was something that was beyond their ability to resolve. They tried to connect remotely to the DVR device for the surveillance system and were unable to access it. So I went out there this morning. I have some pictures and a little bit of video to show on what the result was. This is outside the normal realm of what I do, but I do support a variety of different equipment that are not actually Windows computers. My clients know it may cost them a little bit more when I do that because I don't know that equipment that well. I'll go ahead and punch over here to Baby Beast. Now, this is the first Tech Tales where I'm using the Big Beast build and the Baby Beast build. So it's two computers in one. Like, what was it? What was that bubblegum? Spearmint or Double Mint? Something has the twins. So there's two motherboards in that computer, the Big Beast build and the Baby Beast build. And the computer next to it is the computer that I've been using for years. That's a 2012 vintage. And rather than upgrading it, I bought the Big Beast build, which Kerry Holzman built on his channel during live stream. So here we go. Switch over to this Baby Beast, and that's where I have the photos queued up and ready to go. So this is the DVR system for the surveillance system. Since the last time that I had been out to their office, they moved it. It used to be down this wall in a cage, a rack mount cage that was mounted on the wall. That cage is no longer on the wall. Turns out the person working in that office was complaining about the noise, the fan noise from the heavy-duty network switch and from this device, and they wanted that equipment out of that office. So they had another support person who does cabling, I don't do cabling, come out and move that cage into another room, another space, a utility space, but this DVR stayed here because the coax cables for the cameras all come to this point, and they didn't want to have to reroute them. So this place where you see me holding this is up above the acoustic tile drop ceiling. The acoustic tile is down below this photo, down below where I'm moving my mouse right now. This DVR is sitting up on a ledge. This is the top of the wall in this interior office, and they just have this balanced up there on a ledge. It's not balanced on the wall. There's a little bit more substance to it. And this is another piece of their camera equipment here, the power supply for it. So I'm showing that's where the DVR is. Now, apparently the problem was created when the device was moved into the other room, And they didn't realize it because they hadn't tried to connect to the surveillance system through their cell phones. They don't routinely connect to them. They don't even have a display in the office of the cameras. The only time they use their phones to look at the surveillance system is when there's an issue. So they don't know if this was ever working since the equipment had been moved. Then I'm going to move on to the next photo. This is the back side of the surveillance system DVR. Over here you can see the coax connections. The cameras are connected by coax, not by Ethernet. Cameras can be connected either way. This cable right here is where the fault lies. This is an Ethernet port, and that connects the DVR system to their in-house network and to the internet. And those connections are required in order for a cell phone to be able to connect to see the cameras. This line here goes across over the above the acoustic tile area and runs all the way over to where the network patch panel and switch are now located. This is a VGA port and this is an HDMI port. When my client called me, they couldn't even verify that this system was up and running. I had them turn the power switch off and turn it back on and see if that would restore access to their smartphones. It did not. I came out with a 30-foot long HDMI cable, plugged it into this port, and ran it down into this office and connected to the HDMI port on a computer monitor that was at the desk in that office. And right away, the cameras were all there. So the cameras were working fine. The DVR was working fine. We're just unable to access it. This DVR had a static IP address. And when I looked that up in my records in OneNote, found what the static IP address was supposed to be, I tried to ping it from one of their computers. The ping failed. We called the DVR system, the DVR support that's across the country in Eastern time zone. We're in the Pacific time zone. And they told me how to access the menu system from within the DVR. So I had also connected a wireless keyboard and mouse dongle to the USB port on the front of this computer. That was, let's see, right here. See, there's my USB dongle right there for the wireless keyboard and mouse. With that, I was able to check that the static IP address is still configured on this device. So then I figured it's got to be this Ethernet line. Let's go on to the next picture. Here's the rack mount cabinet that has their network switch and has their patch panel up here. So now we needed to know which one of these wires is the wire coming from that DVR. I got up to the very top of the ladder that I was standing on to get into that acoustic tile area so that I could see the wires going across. Well, the wire coming from this DVR was a dark gray, this one right here, and all the other wires for the computers that were up there were blue, this kind of blue. But I saw about 10 feet away from this acoustic tile panel that I was at, almost all of the Ethernet, it looked like all of the Ethernet cables were connected to I'm going to call it a butt splice. It's not a barrel connector because, well, with coax, we would call them barrel connectors. It's a connector where they can plug an RJ45 jack into one side and an RJ45 jack into the other side. It's a method of extending a cable that's not able to reach. So we went finding other ceiling tiles in the office to find the one where we could get up to where those connectors were. And the intention was that we would disconnect and reconnect both ends of that joint. When we did that, we found that it didn't have a connector there. Most of the blue cables did. But down another 10 feet at another ceiling tile, there was a connector for it. So we went down to that one, disconnected it from both ends of the connector of the splice, and then reconnected it. And then we got out here to this. This is the cable. This is the Ethernet cable coming in, because there's another place where it spliced again and returned to the gray color. And this was connected right into that port right there. Now, once we identified which cable it was, we could tell, okay, that port does not have a connection. So then, before pulling this cable tester out, I had taken another Ethernet cable that I had with me, a long one, and I ran it from the DVR, from this Ethernet port to the DVR, down the wall to the wall jack that was used by the computer that was in this office. When I did that, then we could access the surveillance system from the smartphones. So that proved that it's a connection problem. So the next thing that I did was to get this tester out. So this tester has two sides to it. This one and the one that I'm going to show you in a video in a moment. I plug the Ethernet cable into here and slide this blue switch to the on position. And then, let's see, we got the Ethernet switch in between here. Let me come back to the Ethernet switch in a little bit. Oh, I know the other end of the tester is back here at the beginning of the photos. So here's the video, and here's what really showed us the cause of the trouble. I'm going to hit the play button here, and right now it's lit on line number 3. What this tester does is it tests each wire through the Ethernet cable. There's 8 wires. Clicking play. There's 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. Skipping over number 4. Number 4 has a problem. Now, after we disconnected and reconnected all of the Ethernet connections between the DVR and the Ethernet switch, we did get an orange light on the network switch, which meant we had a connection. These lights right here, you can tell some of them are green, some of them are, well, they look white, but they're dark. They're not lit. The ones that are not, that are just white, black letters on a white background, those are not lit. So they're not connected to a device that's on right now. The green ones are connected to a device that's turned on right now. So once we reset all of those Ethernet connections, we did get an orange light for this connection. An orange light on this particular switch indicates that it has a connection, but it's only communicating at 10 megabits per second or 100 megabits per second. The ones that are green are 1 gigabit connections. It's not surprising or unusual for a video surveillance DVR to be operating less than 1 gigabit. 100 megabits per second is fine for it. 10 megabits per second is probably fine for it. But I needed to know, was that orange because line number 4 was bad? So I put the Ethernet cable back between the DVR and the wall outlet that we knew was functional, the wall outlet that shows up in green when the computer is connected to it. So with that, the DVR connected to that wall outlet, we got an orange or amber light, which indicates, yes, that DVR is always at 10 megabits per second or 100 megabits per second. So the orange was completely acceptable. Now, once we had that connection there, after resetting all those Ethernet connections, we could pull up the DVR on the cell phones. However, the images would not advance and we get a signal saying there's a network fault. When we're connected with the Ethernet to the wall outlet, it worked perfectly. But after resetting all of those Ethernet joints and getting the amber light, we were able to connect from the smartphones to the DVR, but it wasn't a good connection. So it takes us back to the problem of that Ethernet with multiple joints over its path. So my client called the person who did the cabling. The person's going to come out and run a single line of Ethernet from the DVR all the way to the switch. They're also going to do some other improvements. The technician explained that he was had a time crunch on the day that he did this work and was needing to come back out and fix up a couple of things. So here's another thing that he says he's going to fix. This is the switch down here on the bottom part. I'm moving my mouse over that area. That's the switch that you see in the previous video. So this next picture, the previous picture, this next picture is going to be up above. Here's the patch panel. These are the way the patch panel jacks are supposed to be snapped in place in the patch panel. And you can see over here, these are not snapped into place. You see they're hanging out back here. That's not a good setup. It could work fine, or it could be other problems coming up. It certainly is inconvenient to disconnect a cable for diagnostic purposes. If I disconnect one of these cables, that socket is going to fall down here, which we can do it, but it's not good. Well, he explained that there was something about this patch panel that those new sockets just didn't snap in correctly. So he's going to fix that. That's going to be nice to have that fixed. So that was the long and short of that service call. I hope this was useful. In addition to these Tech Tales series, I usually live stream on Saturdays at 11 a.m. Pacific time. And there's people that join me in a Zoom session that are watching the live stream, and also people in the chat room during the live stream. And what we offer there is free support for anybody who has a computer-related question or an issue. I can connect to people's computers remotely and try to help with whatever is needed. We've been through many different things there. So if you need assistance with that, and you're maybe you're available on Saturdays, maybe not, but you can send an email to me. I can do those types of free support sessions other times of the week, and then post them as video content on my channel if we don't do it as a live stream. I hope that was useful. Have a great day. Catch you later.